Warhammer is one of those franchises that looks really interesting on the surface, but the more I look into it, the less I want to get into it because, well, it's one of those franchises that seems to be really, really hard to get into and has a lot of annoying bullshit associated to it. And yeah, I really don't want to get into Warhammer because of it, so I've always kind of shied away. But this is Warhammer Speed Freaks, a game that seemed like a cool idea. It really did. This is a game that seemed like it was going to actually be a really fun game. But then you look at this, what's all this? We've got 6 players are currently playing 2 public games. Whoa! Like, there's 6 players playing right now. That's actually quite a big number compared to most, like, games. But I'm going to create a game. We've got Death Rally, which is like a death race. We've got Kill Convoy. And then you've got Custom Rally. So, yeah, and you've also got a creation mode. So, there's a lot going on in this game. So, we're going to go with Death Rally. And you can pick a map. There's different maps. You've got, like, I think this must be a desert one because it says dust. And then you've got, like, a fire one. We're going to go with the fire one. So we've got bots on, bots, difficult, yeah. Yep. And, yeah, I just put playing. And, yeah, we're doing it solo. Let's go. So, as you can clearly see, the game developers of this game are one of those developers. Like, look at how this begins, man. Waiting for game to start. Like, what is this? Why are we waiting for the game to start? Let's go. You know? It's kind of silly, really. Why? But it'll make sense when you realize the truth about this game. And here's the biggest problem with this game. Well, you'll find out when we actually start. Right, we're going to start. There we go. So, the biggest problem with this game is the game developers thought that this would basically be a competitor for, like, games like Rocket League and Fortnite, and thought, oh yeah, let's make this game online focused. Let's focus on the online portion of the game. Like, you know, like, it's just like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. But the thing about it is that by doing that, by focusing on the online, you've essentially neglected the single player experience. And by doing that, you've essentially made a worse game. Just simply because you decided that you were going to make a single player focused experience. I mean, you were going to make a multiplayer focused experience and not a single player focused experience, which has essentially kind of screwed you over in a way because no one's playing it, you know? And that's the thing, it's just like, why should people waste their time playing a game that they don't know will be, why should people waste their time, like, or waste their money buying a game if they don't know if it's going to be active? And that's the thing about online gaming, people. And that's kind of the topic of the video. It ties into online and how stupid it is to make games for online play primarily, you know? It really is a dumb thing to do, like, outside of very specific circumstances. Like, there are situations where it's worth doing, but those situations are rare, and ultimately you're going to find that there's not really many games out there that can work as online focused games. And even then, it's like, to me, they just shouldn't exist, you know? If you're going to do online, make it an additional feature, not not like the main focus of the game, you know? Like, I'm not saying that online play can't be fun sometimes, but it's like, let's be real here, guys. When was the last time you enjoyed an online game? Like, be real, guys. I'm sure most of us would say, well, we haven't really had that much time since we were younger, and that's the thing. Like, online gaming like targets kids, I guess. I think that's kind of the thing. Like, but kids have their own tastes, and I'm not sure Warhammer is like big enough, like, of an IP to get kids involved, because they just want to play what all the other kids are playing, you know? And that's why you'll see games like Fortnite doing so well. It's because, you know, everyone's playing it, so everybody has to be in on it, you know what I mean? And that's kind of the idea of it. So when you essentially play a game like this, which is kind of like supposed to be focused on online play, it's like one of those games that you see the potential in it. And the thing is, this game could, I'm not saying that this game shouldn't have online play. I mean, if it wants to have online play, yeah, fair dues. But it has to have a solid single player experience. If the single player isn't there, then what's the point? You know? Now, obviously, this game does have single player. As you can clearly see, I am playing with bots here. These aren't real players that I'm playing with. It's deceptive to make it look like I'm playing with real players, but I'm not. It kind of reminds me of Time Splitters, where, you know, you have like but that's the thing. Time Splitters has a campaign. It does, but it also has an arcade mode. It's kind of what it reminds me of, except it doesn't have an arcade mode. You know, you could probably do what Time Splitters did and add like an arcade mode, and just give people something to do within this sort of like thing, you know, something that people could actually play single player and actually have a bit of progression, you know, and it wouldn't be too difficult to do, you know. It give people something to do single player, you know. Not everybody wants to play multiplayer, but if they've got a single player component, then they'll be able to actually play. I mean, that's the thing. I can play this right now, but it's like every game is just the same. It's just me versus bots. And, you know, you can just do that if you want, but it's just like, this is not the way to present your game. You know, you've got to think. Like, are people going to want to play the game this way? Are people going to want to play this solo experience? You know, or are they going to want to play multiplayer? Or do they want a bit of a solo experience? And the thing is, yeah, sure, you can put a lot into multiplayer, but the thing about it is that this isn't a free-to-play game for starters, so obviously you're not going to get a lot of people playing the game, and people have actually criticised the developers for not making it free-to-play, which the developers really should listen to that, because honestly, if they wanted to make it multiplayer-focused, then free-to-play is the way to go nowadays. It really is. If you want to make a multiplayer-focused game, you've got to make it free-to-play, because you need to get those numbers. It's very important. Because if you don't have people playing it, the game is going to die before it's even begun, you know? And that's the problem. So, you know, like, it's just, it's a shame, really, that it's gotten to this point. But yeah, you need a lot of players to get one of these games going. As you can see, there's a lot of players in here. And most of the game is just going to be bots, you know? Because most of the game is basically just you versus bots, and like you have to have a lot of like players in the match to make it work, because it's all team based. So it's like they didn't really think it through. Like this is why I would like to call tone deaf game developers, because that's what it is at the end of the day, you know. These developers are tone deaf. Like, they really are tone deaf. They don't understand the landscape of video games right now, and that's why they're in the situation they're in, you know? And I don't understand it. Why make a multiplayer focused game when you can add a single player and suddenly now your game is actually, people actually play it, you know? People actually will want to buy your game just for the single player. You've got an audience there, you know? And that's the thing, like, what happens when the servers go down? What's left? Just this, playing with bots forever? I mean, the thing is, this game isn't terrible. I'm just going to say that right here. The game, mechanically speaking, this game is actually quite fun. But because it's focused on entirely on online, it's like, you know, it's really lacking in a lot of ways. Like, I wouldn't be able to do this if they didn't have bots. There's just no way. But it's just like, what do developers expect? Do they expect games like this to have like enough people to support online? You know, do they expect these games to not be dead at launch? You know, like of course they are, because this is a niche. Arcade racing is a niche, especially nowadays. You know. And that's one thing I never understood. Why did so many people... And I mentioned this in my Arcade Racing is Dead video, you know, and all talking about that. Why are so many game developers so bent on making arcade races, like, multiplayer focused? Like, multiplayer, like... I mean, yeah, I get it in the split screen sense, but in terms of, like, multiplayer that's online, it just isn't the same, really, you know? And that's the thing, so it's just like, you really need to think about this a little bit more, you know, and think, maybe what we should be doing is making the online, like, a separate, like, a side thing, and focus on the single player. And if people like the single player, they play the online, and yeah, then they'll play for the long term, you know? But if people only want to play the single player, then they'll at least get something out of the game, you know? I mean, it's like, you know, like, as you can see, I'm killing a lot of people, so it's just like, but that's because these are bots. I'm not playing against real players. If I were playing against real players, I'd be dying a lot. Like, it's got the multiplayer sort of like, look, like, appearance to it. It's got the multiplayer presentation. It clearly wants to be a multiplayer game, and you can't get away from that fact. You can't, you know, and that's the thing. It's trying so hard to be something that it really can't be, instead of just being what it really should be, a fun single-player experience with a bit of online multiplayer thrown in. That's what they should be doing, you know? You would think by now that game developers would start realizing this fact, but they don't. It's just like... And that's the thing, like, even if I wanted to play multiplayer, are there going to be people to play with? And that's another thing, it's like, back in the day, what people don't seem to understand is that when we played multiplayer games together, back in the day as kids, split screen, not all of us had the game, you know? We didn't all have the game, you know? We played games that other people had multiplayer because we didn't own it, because we couldn't afford to have all these games. What I don't understand is how on earth do game developers expect people, particularly kids, because kids are the people that play multiplayer for the most part nowadays anyways, like, to buy, like, all of these games just, like, that their friends have, just to play online all the time. It's just like, it's not realistic, you know, to expect to like buy a game, to expect people to buy a game just simply because they want to play with their friends. That's the thing, it wasn't the case back in the day. That's not how it happened. Back in the day, you know, you pretty much just played on your friend's system, and they had the game and you didn't. And you got to play the game with them without having to own the game yourself. Now you have to own the game yourself. And you wonder why online gaming is just, why multiplayer gaming is the way it is. You know, it's just like, who wants to play multiplayer nowadays because of that, you know? It defeats the whole point, you know, if you have to own the game. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, you know? But ultimately, like, that's why you see so many online games as free-to-play now, because it's just like, well, you know, they want more people to play it, and if it costs money, people aren't going to be able to play it, so they make it free-to-play. It's just common sense at this point. You'd think that game companies would recognize that fact, but they don't, you know? And it's stupid. It really is. But that's just kind of how it is. And it's such a shame, because you see the potential in games like this. You know, you do. This is a fun game. It is. And it's a game that, you know, I think if you took away the presentation of what it is, it would be a better game if it wasn't going for the online and just so... And I call it arrogance, because it is. They were arrogant enough to believe that this game would do well online. You know, would be and that's the thing. When you design these online-centric games, it is arrogance. You're arrogant enough to think that your game is going to get known enough that more people are going to play it online, you know, and it's going to do well online. It's not, you know. Just because a game is fun doesn't mean that people want to play it online. It's not that simple. Like, and I've said this many times before, the reason why a lot of people, the reason why a lot of games don't do well online has nothing to do with the quality of the game itself and the fun factor. It has all to do with simplicity, you know? The games that do well online are the games that are the most straightforward and simple games to play. Now, you could argue, well, this is simple and straightforward. I mean, yes, but at the same time, and here's the thing. The problem with this game is that it has a lot going on for an arcade racer, and it's a very niche thing. When I say simple, I mean something that brings people together, but at the same time, it has to be something that people, like, are willing to play together, you know? And that's the thing, you know? People have to be willing to play this game together if they want to, like, that's the thing. You've got to be willing to play the game with other people, and, like, if no one's going to play the game, then what's the point? You see what I mean? And this is the thing, it's like, there needs to be a draw for a lot of people, and that's why you'll see, like, I mean, look, you've got unlockables and stuff. Like, it thinks that we're actually playing with other people, but we're not. You know? If you want the game to succeed, then you've got to have a strong single player. You really do. I mean, look at Titanfall and Titanfall 2. That pretty much summed it up. Nobody cared about Titanfall because it didn't have a strong single player. But the moment that it did have a strong single player, suddenly people actually start giving a fuck, you know? Like, the moment that... And that's the thing. This game should have seen things the same way. Have a single-player campaign so that people can actually play the game and, you know, just have fun, you know, like playing solo. Instead of just... Because that's the thing. I'm not saying that you can't have fun doing this, what we're doing here, but it's the same shit every time, and it's just like... Yeah, we like a bit of progression and we like a bit of feeling. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, they're using level systems, but no, people don't just want level system progression. They just want to, like, you know, they want to play through a campaign or something along those lines. Like, you know, that's what they want to do. You see what I mean? And it's just like an experience that's supposed to be multiplayer that isn't multiplayer always feels cheap. It just does. It's like, because you know that the multiplayer experience is going to be very different, but at the same time, it's like, you know, when you advertise it so much as a multiplayer game, people are going to feel like they're missing out on something when they're only playing single player, when the game is dead, you know what I mean? It's just like, they're like, oh, we missed the boat, and it's just like, well, what's the point now, you know? We're never going to play the game as it's intended, you know, so it just feels... like I'm not even getting the full experience, you know what I mean? And that's the problem with this game. In a nutshell, you know, are you getting the full experience from this game? You know, like, that's the thing. When you're playing with bots, like, you can clearly see I'm getting these streaks. These streaks should be really hard to get, but they're not, because I'm up against bots who are brain dead, because bots are brain dead, you know, that's how it is. They're not supposed to be the smartest of people, because you can't beat players. Players are always going to be smarter than bots. It's like playing Warcraft 3 with bots. It's like playing a completely different game. Now, you don't have to deal with APM or anything like that shit, because they're not going to have any APM. Their APM is going to be basically non-existent. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. So when you consider that fact, it's like, what, like, why even bother trying with this shit? Like why even bother trying to make this game multiplayer if it's just not going to be worth doing? Like multiplayer focused. I mean, you can still have a multiplayer component, just don't make the whole game just based around multiplayer. Just don't. You've got to do the single player first. That's the most important part. Like, if you get the single player wrong, then, you know, you can't really save it. You know, the single player is so important. And this goes for a lot of other games, including fighting games as well. Like, a lot of people, like, look down on single player in fighting games for some reason. I don't understand why. The fucking fighting game community is full of idiots. But, you know, it's just like, it's so important that fighting games have a good single player as well, because, you know, if they do have a single player, then that's enough to convince people to maybe give the multiplayer a go, even if it isn't for them. It's like, could you imagine Warcraft 3 if it didn't have a single player campaign? Oh my god, the game would basically, no one would want to play that game. Who would want to play fucking Warcraft 3 without fucking, I mean, I'm sure people would who are into RTS, but you know, it's just like, if that didn't have a single player campaign, man, it just wouldn't, like, it wouldn't be the same. Like, I wouldn't be singing Warcraft 3's praises at all. I wouldn't even be talking about Warcraft 3 today if it didn't have a single player campaign, man. Like, it's so crucial that games have a single player. It is very important, man. Very important. Like, one of the most important things that they have a single player campaign, man. And that's the thing, like, this game not having one is it's a disaster, you know? Yes, you can play a single player against bots, but that doesn't mean anything, you know? I mean, the silly thing is, this is Warhammer, you know? Warhammer has a ton of lore and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying you have to go deep with the lore and have a fully fleshed out story with this game, but there's something you could do, like, just a silly side story or side plot about the Orcs, and like why they decided to start this racing league or something. You know, you don't need to go all the way. Just give us a bit of a premise, and like kind of, you know, like have some sort of a league or something that within the game that you work your way up through. You know what I mean? Like just like a mode, like a single player focused mode that, you know, you progress through, and you know, you unlock the next mode, and you know, then the next level on the next track, and you know, like most racing games, an arcade mode, you know, just something simple like that is all this game really needs, and then suddenly more people would care, you know. And it's just like, it's so sad really when you see games like this. It really is sad. I just feel that we could do better, you know, we really could. Like, this game could do so much better if it had a single player focus. And it's tragic, in a way. It is. It is a tragedy how there's just not enough emphasis on the single player experience. You know? If this was a real player, he'd be trying to dodge my shots by now, you know? He'd be like, oh shit, I'm being attacked. I'm gonna dodge these shots. You know? Crap. You know? And that's the thing. It's like, but they're not. They're just gonna tank them. Because that's the difference between real players and bots. Bots just sit there and tank shots because they're not programmed to deal with all this shit, you know? Players will actively avoid getting hit. They will actively do things like maneuvers to avoid getting killed, you know? If they find themselves getting shot at, they'll try and get out of the way, you know what I mean? Or try and get behind or something along those lines, and they'll actually properly fight, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. That's what we need game developers to start realizing, you know? It's just so tone deaf to think that people will actually support this game long term and just have it be like this long term multiplayer experience. Like, I just don't understand it. Like, why? But it's like anything. I mean, I know it's not technically Games Workshop that made this game, but it's like anything Games Workshop. They're obsessed with like the social aspect of the games, and you know, it's just like it's hard enough to get a Warhammer game going, let alone like trying to freaking, you know, like play this game. Like, that's the thing. Have you considered that some people just want to like play Warhammer by themselves? Have you considered that fact? Because it's just like, yeah, like that's something that these games could do. Like Space Marine, for example, has a single player campaign, which is great because it's like you can actually play Warhammer solo, you know? You don't have to freaking deal with all of the bullshit like, oh yeah, I have to buy all these miniature figures and then I have to paint them and then I have to fucking figure out a very obtuse, convoluted game, you know, and then I have to like make sure that I have like storage for my armies, and then I have to basically find people who are willing to spend time actually playing this game, and then I have to set up terrain, then I have to set up all this other stuff, and it's just like, you know, like, why can't you just jump into a game? And this is one of the things I've always had about Warhammer, and why I've never got into it. Why does Warhammer have to make itself so difficult to get into? Why can't they just keep things simple? You know? And that's the thing. Why can't they just... And I mean, I understand in the tabletop game you need to have other people. You do. But, like, given the fact that, you know, we have video games now, this is an opportunity to have single-player experiences. And that could get people into the tabletop game, so why not? Try it, you know? But no, instead we're going to just keep it multiplayer, and then it just dies, and nobody wants to play it, you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, I just kind of think that it's a little arrogant for them to assume that this game would succeed in multiplayer. I just do. It's just like, do they not know? You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, but yeah, Warhammer is just one of those things that I probably will never get into in my life. But it's just, I don't understand what, like, it's just such a convoluted thing. You know, it really is. Like, how on earth is anyone supposed to get into that right now? Like, just how? And I just don't get it. Like, I just don't. Like, they make it so hard, and yet we get a game, and you think, ah, yeah, I might not be able to play the tabletop thing, but I might be able to play the game. But then you need other people to play it with, and it's online, and it's just like, and it's a dead online, and you need loads of people to play. It's like, you know, why? It's like, thank God this game actually has bots. That's the one thing that makes this game even remotely playable. You know, if this game didn't have bots, it would literally be an unplayable game that would eventually die and be a copy coaster and worthless, you know? But I think the presentation is what kills it. Even if you have bots, the presentation is the problem, because you can clearly see that they intended this game to be a multiplayer experience. It's so obvious. Every aspect of this screams this is going to be a big multiplayer experience game, but it isn't. It's just me racing against bots. That's what it is. And it's just like, you know, maybe if you focused on the single player first and then just had like a multiplayer component, it would have saved us. Yeah, it would have probably salvaged this game and more people would want to play it. You know, maybe that's what you should have done. Because that's the thing, this game does seem pretty cool. It does. It has potential to be a fun single player experience. Potentially even multiplayer, but the thing is, you know, multiplayer, nobody wants to play games like this multiplayer. They don't. Especially arcade racers. Like, arcade racers do not do well in multiplayer. It's probably why you don't see them anymore, because that's all that people want to make nowadays. Big companies want to make multiplayer games. And the single player ones have to be Soulsborne, you know what I mean? It's like, arcade racing is just, it's a dead genre. You know? And you can tell, look, I've killed that guy 10 times, he's killed me twice. That's because they're bots. If this was real players, it'd be a different story. Like, the game isn't built around bots. That's the thing. It's built around other players. Yeah, you know, and that's the problem. It just should be built around the single player experience first, not the other way around. That's the biggest issue with this game. You know? Just like, stop trying to make these multiplayer experiences. You know, like, just make something that is fun for single player first, and then do the multiplayer after the fact, you know? But I guess some people just aren't smart enough to do that. It's common sense, guys, you know? But yeah, I think the best way to describe this game is, it's just such a shame, you know? I think that's the thing about Warhammer in general. It's just such a shame just how every time I see something that's Warhammer related, I always end up getting, like, turned off by something. and I'm just like, yeah, I don't. It goes from yeah, I'd like to play this to like, actually, maybe not, you know. And that seems to be the thing about Warhammer, just that in so many ways. But the fact that they do these multiplayer focused games all the time, it's just so dumb. And to me, it's arrogant. I think that they are just arrogant and think that they can actually do this and just like that they can actually succeed in it just simply because they have it's Warhammer. People will play it. You know what I mean? It's just like, but yeah, like I'm done with this game, guys. I just wanted to rant about this because it's just like this is why I'm so sick of. I mean, at least I can play it solo with bots, I suppose. But it's just like it's just gonna be the same shit time and time again. I get that. Yes, the gameplay it seems fun, but it's one of those things where it's just like this isn't built for single player, and it should be. You know, just give us like a single player mode. Instead of just play and then just go to like an online lobby menu. Have like a campaign or something. Give us something that we can actually do, and that then we at least get that to enjoy rather than just doing one race with bots and then never play it again. Just have something like where we have to make some progress and and like give us a reason to want to do all the tracks and stuff. Like and this is the thing. This game isn't even split screen. You can't play this game split screen multiplayer. It's only online multiplayer. So if you want to play locally with friends, you can't. So it's just like, why? I just don't understand some game companies. I really don't. But yeah. Anyways, that's me done. So yeah, see you guys.